welcome to Comics Chat. I'm Sarah Cook. I'm a comics writer, and this is a show where I talk with comics creators and fans about their favorite comics and why they love them. If you would like to follow me elsewhere, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at Sarah C. Comics. And if you enjoy this show, like and follow. Today's conversation is with writer and artist Eric Erdek. We talked about his series Espresso Dective, which is very noir. And if you've read my series No Spell Lasts Forever, you know that I am a big fan of noir. So definitely check out his comic. The link to it will be in the show notes. And we also talked about one of his favorite comics and what might be my favorite comic. Although I hesitate to say that about any comic because I really love my favorites for all for different reasons. But if I had one comic only that I could read for the rest of my life, it probably would be this one, and it is Sandman. Eric had some really interesting things to say about Dream's relationship with Desire and about the artwork and how innovative it was, especially for its time. Sandman is so near and dear to my heart, and I really loved hearing Eric's insights about it and what he loves about it and how it impacted him as a creator. I could talk forever about this comic. So I really had a good time chatting about it with Eric, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hi, welcome to Comics Chat. I'm here with creator Eric Erdek. He is the creator of, among many other things, Espresso Detectives, which was, you were generous enough to let me use that as a backer bonus in one of my earlier campaigns for No Spell Lasts Forever, which was really exciting because I feel like they really mesh well together. They're both kind of noir stories. So thank you for that. And is there anything else about your work or any other current projects you wanted to chat about?
Yeah, for sure. I'm basically focusing on Espresso Detective as my main thing. I do have some other ideas, but I just thought,
Mhm.
like, I've got this theory, like,
Mhm.
when you were a kid, you went to the fair, you squirted the water gun into the little clown's mouths, and the balloon blew up.
Yeah.
If you put it to like a bunch of different mouths, the balloon never blows up. So I figured you
Mhm.
hit the full blast into one until a balloon pops. So that's my idea. So I'm gonna focus completely on the Espresso Detective and try to get that really, give it all my energy, and then
Yeah.
like see where it goes.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense because I think, at least for me, like there's an inclination, like I have so many ideas
Yeah,
and I just want to do them all. But you kind of have to limit to at least, I think, just like a couple that you're focusing on, because otherwise you just kind of spin out and never really get anything done.
never finish anything, right?
Yeah.
It's like, get to the
Hmm.
end of it. So I just finished issue 4. And here's the problem is that between issue 3 and issue 4 was 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people forgot because issue 2 did pretty well on the Kickstarter campaign. And then issue 3, it was my best ever. I had like
Wow.
300 backers, I think it was. And I was really
Oh,
excited. I
awesome.
thought, wow, I've arrived, And then a whole bunch of stuff happened. I think COVID was part of it, the whole lockdown.
Yeah.
And my retina detached. I had operations in my eye and all
Oh,
kinds
wow.
of excitement. My mom died.
Oh,
My
that's,
my father-in-law
oh,
died. And we all had our stories during
wow.
that period. And then 2 years later, I came up with issue 4, and half my readers went away. So I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, I don't know if it took too long or what it was. So it's interesting. So now I put out issue 4, and then I've already got a bunch of issue 5 done, and I want to launch like
Oh,
right
great.
away.
Yeah.
See that. One of the things also is that I do everything in the comic. I write it, I
Wow.
draw it, I color it, letter it, lay it out. Is there anything else that needs to be done? I do it. In issue 3, I actually hired 2 different artists to help, thinking that would go faster, and it was the one
Mhm.
that took the longest.
That's
um,
funny.
yeah, but I'll tell you though, working with other artists really upped my own artist game. For some reason, just
Hmm.
like inking or coloring over their work, seeing my
Hmm.
characters like that, I feel like my art's like taking art, leaps and bounds. Um, I do everything digitally, which really helps a lot. Do you want to hear the little bit of the backstory behind Espresso Detective?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I can't even remember when it was. I always say 10 years, but that was a while ago. So let's say maybe like 15 years ago. Um, I used to work in casting. I used to be like a casting director
Oh,
and
wow.
audition actors for commercials here in Hollywood.
Oh, cool.
And I went across, commercial actors are not usually like the same actors who do TV or movies. Sometimes they do, but it's
Hmm.
kind of like you start there. So I would run across insanely talented people that nobody had seen before and go like, oh my God, this guy should be in the movie, So I started kind of like writing parts for the actors that I really liked. And and that's kind of how the whole comic came about. Oh, this guy would make like a great detective, or this should make the great femme fatale, and this would be the great bad guy, and that kind of stuff.
That's
Actually,
really
the guy,
interesting.
the guy who played the boss in The Mask with Jim Carrey, the bald guy, I
Oh.
used to not the Eric Roberts character, but his boss, like the mob boss. He actually come into audition all the time, and I got to know him. And I'm like, this is a great bad guy. So like, I made him the bad guy in it. And so I ended up. My wife's like, yeah, you keep talking about this thing. Just go out there and write it already. So there's a little cafe here called Aroma in the Studio City. I think Studio City. Anyway, and it turns out that that used to be Raymond Chandler's old house.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and in the middle part of it, there's like an indoor part of it, and like you go in there and there's tons of guys just writing scripts in there all day. And it's like the little pocket heaven there. Outside is all the normal, well, not normal, but still LA people, but like, the non-writers, but inside was all the writers. And one of the guys who wrote The Deer Hunter was there. He was like the grandmaster.
Wow.
One of the co-writers. Many people wrote it. Great old guy. And so in the course of this whole thing, I started drinking coffee. I didn't start drinking coffee until my 40s.
Oh.
And it became like a huge aficionado, and I have like all this fancy equipment and everything in the house. And so the whole espresso detective thing started forming along with the protagonist, the actors, the antagonist, the whole trafficking thing. And then I decided I needed some kind of superpowers in there, because even though I'm a big crime story lover, superheroes was like my main thing when I was a kid. So when he drinks espresso, he gets superpowers. And kind of don't we
I
all?
like that.
By the way, it doesn't look like it, but I'm actually like grew up in Guatemala, and my mother's Guatemalan, and I'm Hispanic. So the whole
Oh,
Hispanic
wow.
part of it, well, the reason I'm bringing it up is because originally it was called the Mexican PI. So it's Espresso Detective, they call the Mexican PI because the newspapers call him that, and it's because whenever you're Latino in LA, in California, you're Mexican. In New
Hmm.
York, you're Puerto Rican, and in
Yeah.
Miami, you're Cuban. No matter what you are, that's what they
Hmm.
call you. Kind of like pigeonhole you that. So he's not really
Yeah.
Mexican. He's undefined Latino, but they call him that here.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of talking there, so I'll
Yeah.
let you go for a little bit.
No, that was great. And one of the things that I liked about it too, you were bringing up the espresso and kind of how that factors into. I like that you kind of start in issue one with this metaphor of kind of like espresso becomes this like really delicious, wonderful thing, but under pressure. Like you have to apply this pressure and this heat to it, and then it becomes what it is. And I thought that was such a cool way to kind of weave that in.
I never caught that. That's really cool.
Maybe
That's
that
very
was just
perceptive
my
of you.
reading of
No,
it.
I mean, you're totally right, but I actually just described the process, but I didn't realize that that is kind of like my character too, like, with the pressure and
Hmm.
the heat and all this intricate stuff. He ends up getting this. I mean, at some point, he's going to have to evolve as a character, because right now, even though he rescues lost women, he fights depression as well. That's kind of another thing, another antagonist in the story is his depression. And and the thing is that he tries to fill that depression with like women and sex and physical things, coffee, blues music, and rescuing people. That basically is how he
Hmm.
tries to fill a hole in his heart. So
Yeah.
the idea that this pressure and heat is going to somehow transform him, I like that. I'm gonna have to work on that a little more. That's cool.
um,
And the other thing too is that I've always been a big fan of the European comics, like Bill
mhm.
Manara and Sir Perry and stuff, which tends to be very sexy and kind of science fictiony and so on. And at first, I was trying to conform to some kind of a mental comics code. Like we all grew up with a comics code where it
Mhm.
could only go so far, and then it doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's kind of self-imposed.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I was thinking like that's not really what I like. So I'm gonna actually go there. I'm gonna write things that I don't want my some family members to read. I don't care. So I'm like, oh, what if this person leads to something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I disregard that, and I'm starting to get really more into like the erotic, sexy side of it. Like, anything you watch on Netflix now or on HBO, like Game of Thrones, whatever, it's got tons of like graphic nudity and sex in it. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of like of nerd culture is to have like violence and sex and comedy and a little bit of everything. So I've got a lot more of that in the comic now. I don't know if it's going to limit the audience or not, but it's kind of like what I really feel really
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with. I like reading, so I
Yeah.
put a lot more of that in it now.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting. And I think when it's done in a, like when there's a story related purpose for it and it's actually driving the story, it can be really, really like really powerful. So I'm thinking about something like Sex Criminals or like
Right, right.
yeah, where there's I mean it's there's a lot of nudity.
I mean, it's
um
the whole that's the source of that's their espresso, right? It's the source of their powers, right?
yeah. Exactly. Um but I think because of that, because it's like it's in there for like story purposes and it's kind of driving the story and developing the characters. um I think it can be really interesting when it's done in that way, and interesting to be kind of just moving into a different area with your art too. Like, how's that been as an artist?
Um, it's been really, really satisfying because I used to do a lot of art when I was younger, and paint and oil and acrylic and airbrush and drawing and a little bit of sculpture and like really kind of go for the fine art side of it, even though I love comics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped doing that for a long period of time and did the casting and other things and trying to go back to drawing. I was really bad. I was struggling so hard,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see it from issue one, to two to three. Like, I've actually, I can freehand anatomy again pretty well and get some
Mm-hmm.
interesting movements. And I like to use different camera angles, kind of like Will Eisner or like, I really like Gilbert Shelton, the guy who did the Freak Brothers. He was really amazing artist.
Mm-hmm.
So like some of your artwork really, um, I think it's really come a long ways. And also, having the internet for reference is so nice now.
Yeah.
Back
Mm-hmm.
in the day, you had to go like click
I would.
magazines or ask a friend to pose for a picture, and now you can just like look for a reference on there and that's the pose I want, or that gives me an idea how the hand looks from that angle, coming at you, or.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like as a writer, being able to like, how can I research stuff without the internet? Like to write stuff before the internet would have been much more of a challenge.
A lot more time in the library, for sure.
Yeah, that's funny.
So yeah, I really like the fact that both our comics are noir. I love the whole noir genre. You know,
Yeah,
uh,
I like it too. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about too. Like, No Spell is a noir. So, what is it about the genre that you like?
um, I love the sense of style. I mean, the original old like trench coats and
I
fedoras
do
and
too.
the lighting, the really dramatic
Hmm.
lighting, kind of like Frank Miller does a lot of that dramatic lighting and in Pulp Fiction, the movie, there was a lot of that those kind of characters. I guess the
Yeah.
definition of noir is there's a certain aesthetic to it, with like high
Hmm.
contrast lighting and interesting angles and so on. But also the main thing is that the characters are very morally ambiguous. It's another
Hmm.
another aspect of noir. It's kind of almost like an
Yeah.
anti-hero type thing.
Yeah.
Because villains are usually the most interesting characters. In noir, the hero has a lot of villain qualities,
Hmm.
so it kind of keeps them interesting. Like my guy, his name is Caetano Sanchez. He's basically like a womanizing. Uh, his narrative in his head does not match what's happening.
Hmm.
He'll say like, in a situation like this, I like to say something really witty to show I'm in control, and the
Hmm.
caption shows him like just like screaming, ah, he's about to attack.
That's
He has,
good.
those, he has like a real different view of himself than what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Kind of keeps it kind of counterbalanced. So yeah, the noir thing is the morally ambiguous characters, the femme fatale who's gorgeous and yet she used to basically be a betrayer, was her cliche.
Hmm.
But in mine, I'm kind of having her be like the mastermind. Like,
Hmm.
she's kind of like manipulating Sanchez into doing her dirty work for her because she wants to rescue the lost kids because she used to be one. Oh, I just gave something away. Uh, that's issue 5. So that's a little spoiler there for you. Um,
Yeah, so if you're ready, do you want to hop on into the comic you wanted to chat about?
Well, at this point,
Okay.
one of my favorite, I mean, I have a lot of favorites. I love that vertical line DC did back in the day. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it started off with Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing was the first one, I
Yeah.
believe, and then Constantine kind of came out of Swamp Thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then hey, this is working. So Karen Berger said, let's give this kid. Actually, you know the story about Neil Gaiman, right? How he started.
Um, I've read about how he got started, but is there a specific story?
I've heard it from many different people at conventions and so on, and it kind of keeps changing over the years. But basically, Neil Gaiman and McKean, Dave McKean,
Mm-hmm.
went to Comic Con San Diego, and they stalked Karen Berger, publisher
Oh, really?
of Vertigo, back in the day when stalking was still okay, I guess. And but they were really two really good looking British guys, so they get away with murder with that accent, right? Um, and then so they found her hotel room, they knocked on the door, and they said, "Hey, we want to make a comic for Vertigo." And so they pitched, I can't remember what it was. They pitched some storyline, and she's like, "Oh, well, we have one of those in the works already." I think it was maybe like Animal Man, or I don't know, somebody. I don't think it was anyway, some character. So they went down the line, and all she liked their work, and she thought they were really cool, but did everything was taken. So Neil Gaiman thought, like, what's a character nobody else working on? He goes like, Black
Sandman.
Orchid. Black Orchid. You know what? I have a great idea for her. He didn't have any idea at all. She goes, oh yeah, nothing with him, nothing with her. I mean, so he kind of made up some story on the fly, and then he did a one shot, and that's kind of how he got his first foot in the water. And the reason I'm bringing him up, of course, is because Sandman is really one of my favorite comics.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
one of those things they say if you want to get a newbie into comics, give them Sandman, Watchmen,
Hmm.
and Dark Knight to get them started, right? It's like the ones
Yeah.
you have to give them, right?
I think that's definitely true.
um, and the thing I loved a lot about the Sandman is that it kind of first of all, Neil Gaiman creates a story within a story within a story thing, which
Yeah.
makes it really interesting.
Hmm.
And he draws a lot on Shakespeare and on mythology, all the mythologies, really.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you know this, but a guy called Pierce Anthony wrote a series of books called the Incarnations or of Immortality series. Remember that one? Did you read that?
I've never read them. Hmm.
He wrote one about death, one about war, one about destiny, one about basically he did the characters that Neil Gaiman
Hmm.
did way before he did so, but he did it differently, so it kind of was like I can see where Neil
Yeah.
Gaiman was pulling ideas from,
Hmm.
um, but I don't think he had a Sandman, so that was kind of cool. My favorites were Sandman, Hellblazer, and Preacher. They were all Vertigos.
Hmm.
And this is like one of those delusional artist things. But I always felt like when I grabbed the issue of the Sandman, it parallels something in my life. I don't know if
Hmm.
everybody felt that way. That's why we loved it. But like, oh, he's going through this now, just like me. Like he's having like Hellblazer's having a breakup with Kid, or like. Did you ever feel like the
Yeah.
comics parallel your life at all?
I think so. I think the thing that I felt like it kind of paralleled the way that I feel about things.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, I think one of the things that really resonated with me about it is he just has this kind of like poetic, like lyrical way of just kind of examining like the things that his characters are experiencing. Um, and it just like what's the line? Is sometimes when you jump, I'm not getting it right.
Hmm.
Sometimes when you leap, you fly, or whatever that line is. And he's talking about kind of
Interesting.
overcoming
Yeah.
your fears. And that was something that I think when I was first reading it, I was thinking a lot about kind of overcoming some of my own anxieties, and just he was able to express that in such a like poetic way. And I think that was a lot of what resonated with it most about me. Um, just it was because I went to school for creative writing and my concentration was
Mhm.
in poetry, so I was kind of thinking a lot about that. And I think that's why, because like these little turns of phrases can just kind of like capture feeling it just so perfectly if you have like the right words. Even in a
And
way, I feel like
yeah.
where if you try to describe it in like a huge essay about this emotion, you're not going to capture it as well as just like the right kind of couple turns of phrases. And he was so good at that. And I just read one of these passages and be like, that is exactly how I feel about this thing.
I never realized that's what it was. There was something that really hooked me. And
Mhm.
of course I really went for the art and the concepts and the supernatural stuff, but yeah, the common humanity that he could just
Yeah.
say poetically, that's a really big one. Um, something else that I really like, I was thinking about this when you were mentioning the poetry of it. Um, there's a certain kind of overview, like,
Mhm.
seeing things from beyond death,
Yeah.
or like the bigger picture. Even in the
Mhm.
most horrible scenes, there was kind of like yes, there was that horrible, mass murder in the diner where like the guy with
Mm.
the moonstone controls everybody and makes them do stuff. But then, like,
Mhm.
after that, they're in an afterlife, and then they go to the dreaming,
Yeah.
and then it's like, this like a bigger picture view of life that I really liked. That gave me kind of like,
Mhm.
okay, my little tiny problems, they're just a little part, and you die, and then so, possibly something else happens, or there's something else happening in dreaming, or even really mundane problems are part of a celestial chess game of some kind.
Yeah. I like that. That's really interesting. And I think it's kind of having Dream look at these things that are happening to these people he's interacting with. Like he's looking at it kind of from some distance. And I think that's almost like, I don't know, it makes you as the reader kind of think of it in a different way. Whereas like if one of the humans were the main character and they were going through these things, then we'd be right there with them, kind of like in it, which can be really cool and interesting too. But I think kind of looking at like what is the human experience from the
Mhm.
distance that Dream does, it does kind of give you that bigger perspective. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think that Rita, I think her name was the one who had
Mm-hmm.
the mother of Daniel. If you read the story from her point of view, it's this really horrific, drab, tortured dreams, a monster,
Mm-hmm.
and then you switch over to the big picture, and like dreams just doing his thing, and things are happening, and then of course Daniel becomes Dream.
Yeah.
So it's like, things that a human
Mm-hmm.
would never know. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so that's, yeah. And of course the family issues were interesting because we all have those.
Hmm.
Desires always out to get him, that
Yeah.
little jealous, backstabbing
Yeah.
little, you know, so yeah, it's the whole family stuff, right? And it's
Yeah.
and death being the nicest one really
I
kind of was
know.
mind
I
blowing.
love that. She's my favorite, and I love that she is the nicest one. Which
And I
makes
used to have
sense
like,
because I think like I always loved that about her character because you have this kind of like more traditional kind of picture of like a Grim Reaper character.
yeah.
And she's the opposite of that. Like she's comforting and supporting, which if you're gonna have someone like usher you into death, like you
Mhm.
want it to be someone who's gonna be
She's
comforting.
like she's a cheerful shepherd, not the Grim Reaper,
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones. I mean, I was kind of young at the time, but it's like this little tiny, tiny baby.
Hmm.
She goes to the hospital, and this
Yeah.
little newborn looks up and goes, "That's it. That's all."
That's
Oh,
all
am
you
I out of
get.
focus there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out of focus there. Yeah, that's all you get. And she goes like, "Yep, that's all you get," and off they
Mhm.
go. But let me see if
Oh,
I can.
that was heartbreaking.
Am I out of focus in your camera?
A little bit.
Oh, okay, I'm
There,
back. I'm
it's
back.
back.
Okay. It was heartbreaking, but at the same time, it kind of explains, how those horrible things could happen. It's like,
Hmm.
it's yes, the baby died, and yet there might be more to the story. And that gives me a
Hmm.
lot of hope in a lot of ways. So
Yeah. Oh,
there's a
I
lot
like
of
that.
stuff in there. Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, like these
yeah,
moments that are like really difficult, really sad moments are also, kind of a part of the bigger thing that's going on.
yeah. I mean, I hope it is. Anyway,
Yeah,
you know,
hopefully.
yeah. I have this saying I really like, which is nonfiction gives you facts, but fiction gives you truths. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. I think that's
so
true. I like that.
and I basically consume fiction. I hate news. I'm documentaries are okay, but I don't like nonfiction. It's too one dimensional. Fiction tends to give you like you can actually enter somebody else's life and see it from their point of view in fiction.
Yeah. I remember seeing some meme or something
Mhm.
where I think it was a teacher who said that she got tired of hearing her students saying that fiction is real or nonfiction is real and fiction is made up. And so she started saying like fiction, I forget exactly how she phrased it,
Yeah.
but something like nonfiction is like truth told through facts and fiction is truth told through story, I think is how she
Hmm.
phrased it.
That's
I
right.
think
Yeah, that
that's
makes a
really
lot of
true.
sense. Yeah, and that was actually Neil Gaiman's main focus was the story. You know,
Mhm,
the story as, you know, he goes to Africa and you hear those traditional African stories, you know, that they're so spiritual and deep. And then, you know, the fact that story itself is what makes us human, I think is one of his points, you know.
mhm.
And the idea
Yeah.
that story is so glorified, that's another cool thing about the Sandman, I think.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting about how we resonate so much with stories because you hear things about like all of these like public speaking tips and things. And like,
Mhm.
if you're trying to get a message across, if you're giving a presentation, you shouldn't just list out the facts. You should tell a story and an anecdote, and it will, people will resonate so much more with what you're saying. And I think it is something that's like just really intrinsically human to relate to stories in that way.
So you and I are doing some of the most important work in the world. We're making
I
stories.
agree.
Let's go with that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Without stories, we would just be drones, you know, doing work.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's true.
All right, well, congratulations to indie comic writers everywhere. That's what I say.
Yeah, you're doing important work.
Exactly. Keep it up.
So what are one of the things that I like about Sandman that I think is so interesting is how it's so episodic and he's able to tell these like stories that stand on their own in some ways, but are also still woven into the overarching narrative. Um, do you have any of those kind of little episodes that are your favorite?
In Sandman?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think what's really nice about Sandman, I mean, I read it in collected form. I didn't
Mhm.
I was out of the country when all the individual comics are coming out. So reading it in
Mhm.
graphic in like collected form is great because the collections really do exactly what you say. There's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
different stuff, and yet they kind of like encompass you know, whole arc.
Mhm.
I mean, the first one was really exciting where he had to get his all his tools back, and we get to
Yeah.
meet, you know, Satan and no, I guess Lucifer's name. They get to meet Lucifer, and who then, you know, moves to LA and opens a nightclub, right?
Yeah. I love
um,
that.
and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna leave hell. I'm done with this. And then you know, you get to meet all the Norse gods and all that stuff, and but wow, you know, thinking back to all the different ones, the Doll's House was really interesting. This whole like Lion, Witch, in the Wardrobe theme it had to it, you know, this whole
Mhm.
like that kind of fantasy. Um, I think that the kindly ones was pretty sad.
Yeah.
I could
That might
smell
be
the
my
end coming.
favorite.
It was a great story, but I could smell the end coming. I didn't like it. You know, I didn't want it to end. Um, what do you think that's about? Why desire hate dreams so
Hmm.
much?
No, I almost feel like they're, I don't know, except I feel like it has something to do with the fact that, I don't know, Dream is so serious and kind of like very rigid in the way that he sort of does things. And I always thought that that just kind of like irked Desire, which shouldn't be enough of a reason to want to kill him. But I feel
Yeah,
like they kind of, but
yeah.
their personalities, but
His destiny was also really serious,
yeah.
and destruction. No, destruction was nice. But could it be something about maybe Neil Gaiman's trying something between the content, the competition between desire and dreams, the difference between desire and dreams?
Mm.
Because dreams are
Oh, I
kind of like,
like that. Hmm.
I mean, I try to look, yeah, dreams are a manifestation of your desires every night, kind of, right? Or
Hmm.
fears.
I
And
like that.
desires, yeah. Desire was probably the most evil one in the whole
Yeah.
series, because
Hmm.
basically they just want, because this desire isn't about fulfillment, it's just the desire. It's like a
Hmm.
longing, suffering sort of thing.
Yeah. Whereas dream, the dream, you dream about the things that you desire, and then when he's in the dreaming, he can just
Mhm.
make those dreams real. So it
Right.
makes sense that there would be kind of a jealousy there on Desire's part.
Yeah,
That's
maybe the dream was
interesting.
fulfilling people's desires. Maybe that's why.
Maybe something like that. That's really
If I ever get
interesting.
if I ever get Neil Gaiman in a panel, I'm going to ask him now because I don't think I've ever heard it asked to him.
Yeah, that would be a good question. I'd be
Yeah,
interested to see what you said.
exactly. Yeah.
That's very
So
cool.
if anybody hearing this ever heard Neil Gaiman talk about that, let us know.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll give millions of listeners if anyone has heard it.
Um, but yeah, I agree about the kindly ones, and I think it might be my favorite for similar reasons. I think it's kind of the culmination of all of the themes that have been kind of going through it throughout, like his death and all of that kind of finally happening. And I think just also like his kind of understanding of responsibility. Like I think he kind of, when we first meet him, has puts the responsibility above everything else, and it doesn't really bother him that this responsibility can have negative impacts for other people, like Fiddler's Green. Like
Mhm.
Fiddler's Green is out there living his life in basically human form and like happy and enjoying it, and he makes him come back and give that up, saying that he has this responsibility, and that kind of thing like happens repeatedly sort of earlier on.
To
um
himself and to others, right?
yeah, to himself and to others, and it's like
Yeah.
responsibility means kind of giving up everything for this responsibility. But I think that evolves over the course of the story as he kind of, I don't know, humanizes himself more as he has these interactions with people over the course of the story. And then by the end, he's doing the opposite. And he thinks that it's his responsibility basically to sacrifice himself and to let someone new take over the dreaming. Um,
He
so
didn't really
he's
have a
still
choice.
prioritizing.
He was on his way out. Those kindly ones, you can't stop them. The Furies,
Yeah.
man, they're unstoppable. Yeah,
They,
but
I
yeah,
think they would have gotten him eventually. I think he could, like, there's that
yeah,
scene where Death is telling him, like, well, you could have, like, if you had stayed in the dreaming, they couldn't have gotten you, or you could have, like,
right.
what's her name? The fairy is saying, like, well, we could just
Nuala,
run away
yeah.
to, yeah, and Walla. Um, but he didn't try to do anything like that. And I think even if you did, they would have gotten him eventually. But he didn't try. He just kind of, I think,
Mhm.
accepted his responsibility, but it almost means like the inverse of what he thought accepting responsibility meant in the beginning. And it's just all of these
Yeah.
themes kind of come to a head in the kindly ones, and you see where it was all sort of leading.
It's really thrilling because talking about this, I realized that he's like the anti-Spider-Man. He started out
Yeah.
great power means great responsibility 100%. He went the other route. With great power, irresponsibility, kindness is a little more important, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
funny. But there's so many, like I love The World's End Inn, and I love the
Yeah.
Midsummer. So many just moments that seem completely unrelated but actually aren't. And I love how he's able to weave them in.
Oh, yeah. There's so many. I mean, I think in one book I read he went down like 5 levels. Like he tells a story and a character and it would tell a story, and then that character would be telling a story and that character would be in another story. It's like goes all
Yeah.
on those levels, you know. Like how many can he go down? What's the name of that guy who's immortal? You know, the dream
Oh,
and
Hob.
death kind of
Hmm.
Hobbes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Hob is a great character. And I love how he keeps thinking, like Dream keeps thinking like eventually he's going to be ready to die. And he's like, nope.
I haven't eaten in 10 years, and like
Yeah.
you know how hungry you can get when you don't die of starvation, you know. You ready to go? No, no, I'm not ready to go. And next time he's like, a wealthy merchant, and the next time he's like a
Mhm.
warrior. I was like, all that stuff. Immortality is really a cool idea. You know, a lot of stories have been done about that. It's like, with the vampires and everything, like immortality has like all
Yeah.
kinds of edges to it, you know?
Yeah. It is. It's really interesting, and it's like just the kind of story, like I feel like a lot of vampire stories kind of play with the idea that like what gives our experiences meaning is the fact that they don't last forever. But like what do vampires really think about that, and or what would an immortal person really think about that? It's interesting to play with those themes.
And also, I mean, immortality of 100 years, one thing, mortality of 20,000 years is another thing. It's like,
Yeah.
really what happens to a mind that was made to expire with that much
Yeah.
time.
You'd see so much change. Like how do you adjust to from where you're brain, where the world was at when your brain was kind of developing to where it is hundreds to thousands of years later. How do you make that leap?
I wonder if that's kind of why Dream let himself die also, because I mean he'd been around for hundreds of thousands of years, right? I mean,
Yeah, and there's that line towards the end where Death is saying something like you've been planning this all along, like you've been planning for your death all along.
mhm,
Like he kind of, even before all of this happened with the kindly ones, kind of
mhm.
knew that he wouldn't actually want to just go on forever and ever and ever. Like he would want to die someday, somehow.
So I mean, the fact that we could talk this long about it and we haven't even
I know.
scratched the surface. I mean, that series
Yeah,
was. And have you watched the Netflix version of it?
I did. Yeah, I liked it.
They're following
Did you
pretty
watch
close, aren't they?
it? Yeah, I think they did a good job of following it pretty closely, um, adjusting some things, um, but not changing it too much.
But in Dreaming, they really stuck to the story. It
Yeah,
was, yeah, it was cool
yeah, it
to
is
see
cool.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
When's the next season going to come out? I mean, it's been a while, right?
I know. I don't know when the next season is going to come out. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it's cool.
But I'm glad it's a series too, because there have been so many attempts to make it into a movie. But it's like, how would you make Sandman into a movie unless you're only going to do like one trait of the story or something? But then that's just such a small part of the story. How could you make
Yeah,
it just a 2 hour movie?
it's like you said, it's basically this long thread is what makes it good. You know,
Hmm.
if it had just been like 5 comics and that was the whole story, it wouldn't have been as exciting.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what we haven't talked about was the serial convention. That was
I love that. It's so
it was a
good.
total spoof on Comic Cons, you know? It really
Yeah. The panels and things that they have.
yeah, exactly. And kind of like a little bit of the fanboy disdain some of the creators have for their fans. It's like it's kind of, you and I are, us indies aren't there yet, but I don't know what it's like to have like, all these kids fawning over your work or whatever. It's some of them get kind of weird about it, some of the creators.
It would be weird. It would be cool, but it would also be weird.
I think I'd like to be graceful of it because like Neil Gaiman was
Yeah.
always really graceful. Like Jim Lee's super graceful. He's like the nicest
Mhm.
guy out there, you know. Yeah, it's just there's ways to handle it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, nice ways to handle it for sure.
And as we were discussing in the green room too, the fact that Neil Gaiman, the creator of Sandman, went over to writing prose. Um,
Hmm.
I was watching, I can't remember what it was, documentary or something, where he was doing a signing in
Hmm.
his tour. At the end, one scene, he takes his hand, he sticks it into a champagne bucket full of ice because he signs like thousands and
Wow.
thousands of signatures. His hand swells up from signing so many signatures in one day.
Wow. That's cool that he does that, that he's like, yeah, that he put so much time into doing that and being there for
I'm
the
thinking
fans
like
in that way. That's
I'm
cool.
thinking like I should start shortening my signature in case that ever happens to me.
Just get a
you know,
stamp with it.
just yeah, like a ring, like the king, just like put it
Yeah.
in wax. Yeah. Oh man.
That's funny.
Mhm.
Um, and also too, one of the other things that I have my little notes here that I think is so cool about it is just the characters that he created are so unique, like the Corinthian and like Matthew the Raven or like Merv
Mhm.
Pumpkinhead. It's like, where does this stuff come from in his head? It's not like anything in anything else.
I'm going to say that I can see where he pulls a lot of stuff from. Like I said, if you read a
Mm-hmm.
lot of old science fiction and fantasy and you know all the comics and stuff, um, he pulls a lot from the canon of DC. Like Cain and
Mm-hmm.
Abel used to be
Yeah.
the host of the House of Mystery, which is a knockoff on EC's like Tales from the Crypt type thing. They would tell you the
Mm-hmm.
stories, and the kindly ones, which were the witch, the Virgin, and the Mother, I think it was. They were also hosts of another DC horror
Mm-hmm.
comic, and the Sandman himself was actually
Yeah.
originally so basically I think he,
Mm-hmm.
he pulls a lot from other sources like that. It's just the way
Mm-hmm.
he weaves them in. It's just amazing. I mean, like yeah, he runs with it too, like Goldie the gargoyle or the terrible
Yeah.
thing under the stairs. The House of Mystery itself. Um, so let's see, like for instance, Matthew. I think. that's a cool one, but I think he drew that from the Norse mythology, like Odin has ravens that are his
Mhm.
familiars,
Hmm.
and Mark Pumpkinhead is well, the fact that he was a salt of the earth kind of worker, that was original, I
Yeah.
thought. But where was that from? I mean, I can't remember exactly where it was from, but yeah, he does definitely pull from the giant mass pop fiction culture we have. But he
Hmm.
you know he throws it in there, like even Thor. He put Thor in the comic
Yeah.
in a whole different
And
way,
Loki and hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that stands out about it for you that you wanted to mention?
Dave McKean's covers.
Hmm.
I mean, they're still like ahead of their time. I mean, to this day, the
Yeah.
fact that he would take this montaged art and photography, and I'm not even sure how he did it. I think he used Photoshop. I'm not sure. Back in the day, it's like some of the most mind-blowing, museum quality art pieces. I think that's one of the things that really launched that series and made it more
Hmm.
serious because the artwork was kind of,
Yeah.
like I said, not the top end, but the covers were so avant-garde. That's
Yeah. Yeah. I think the covers and some of the art too, it's was just doing different things with the medium. Just like so
mhm.
innovative within with what the medium could do and
Especially
imagining.
then, because
Yeah.
now
Hmm.
it wouldn't be so mind-blowing, but back then, I
Yeah.
mean, it was.
Yeah. For that time, like the things that they were doing with it were not really being done.
Yeah, for sure not. I mean, Vertigo really broke a lot of ground
Yeah.
with all those.
Mhm.
Another thing that I actually have ripped off from Sandman, totally ripped it off. And I figure, hey, it's an homage. Do you remember that on the cover they would have little hints of what was going to be in it? Like where a little girl finds a balloon, and a raven is lost, or like like little things like that would just be like in the cover, and then you go through the story and kind of Easter egg out the what they was talking about. I do that in my
Funny.
comic, and on the inside cover, like for instance, I don't know if you can see it here. Well, it's gonna be backwards, but like it says, we do that too. Pengs lament and shoot, arrest, or screw. I just kind of put those little captions in there, and then throughout the comic, you kind of Easter egg out, what scene relates to that.
That's cool. I like that.
I totally ripped that off from them.
That's good. I like it. Um, so yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to chat about as far as Sandman or Espresso Detective? Anything else?
Um, no, I think that, yeah, but I think I put the supernatural aspect with the shaman. I think that was from trying to get a little Sandman-esque feeling in there of
Mhm.
the supernatural overview, you know?
Yeah.
So that's tie-in.
I feel like that too. Like my comics have supernatural stuff in them too. And I feel like it like a part of that always goes back to Sandman. That I loved that aspect of Sandman so much that it still kind of takes up space in my brain.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, this has been a great chat.
It has. It's been really cool. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
I
sort of
did
feel like
too.
we were
Thanks
hanging
for
out at a coffee shop.
yeah. Agreed. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Okay, my pleasure, and really great luck with your series. It's good stuff.
Oh, thanks. You too.